2:04 p.m. and I'm bringing the CAMPO Transportation Policy Board meeting into order. Thank you. And I'll go to our esteemed lawyer, Mr. Tuggy. Do we have a quorum? No, you don't count. It's too late now. Yeah, we do have a quorum. Now, need to read the proxies. Late Commissioner Ann Howard has the proxy for Councilmember Zoe Quadri. Councilmember Krista, when she gets here, has the proxy for Councilmember Vanessa Fuentes. Ms. Amy Patillo has the proxy for Judge Andy Brown, and Mayor Jim Pemberton Moran has the proxy for Councilmember Mike Siegel. Public comments. We have one person signed up for public comments. Ms. Oakley from the City of Bee Caves.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us this afternoon. My name is Julie Oakley. I'm the city manager for the City of Bee Cave. And the growing city of Small Bee Cave, Texas is the conjuncture of 4 state highways, which is 2244, Highway 71, Ranch Road 620, and Hamilton Pool Road. So as you can understand, our perspectives are very unique in our small city with this kind of traffic impacts. Our small city would like to offer some assistance to this board and to the TAC on issues impacting small cities from a currently elected and employed city official perspective. Thank you all for volunteering all of your time that you give to this important organization that makes decisions for such widespread effects in all of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And under item 2, we also have executive session. Under Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, the board may recess into a closed meeting to deliberate on any item on the agenda. If the chairman announces that item will be deliberative in executive session, identifies the section or sections to go ahead and be discussed. And at this moment, we will go ahead and go into executive session. The policy board is going to adjourn the executive session under item 11, executive director's report, transportation planning activities, deliberate upon personnel matters as permitted under the government code, section 551.074, concerning the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee. We stand so adjourned at 2:08 at executive session. It is 2:53 p.m. We're back from executive session and no action was taken. Item number 4, report from the Technical Advisory Committee. TAC.
The Technical Advisory Committee met on April 27th with 2 action items and 3 information items on the agenda. We had discussion and recommendation on the draft 2027-2030 Transportation Improvement Program and amendments to the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan, which the TAC voted unanimously on a recommendation for approval to the Transportation Policy Board. We also had a discussion and recommendation on 2026 federal performance measure targets. Nirav is going to provide more information about the TAC discussion during on that item during his presentation on that item today. Ultimately that item also concluded though with a unanimous TAC vote to recommend approval to the policy board. And following that, we had information items including a briefing on the interchange bottleneck study, an update on the 2028-2031 call for projects, which is of course on today's agenda, and an update on CAMPO's regional truck parking plan, which is currently underway, and a follow-up to our freight plan. And finally, we reminded staff about the upcoming deadline for submissions to the fiscal year 2027 Safe Streets and Roads for All, or SS4A grant program, to build on the regional SS4A plan that this board adopted last year. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Chad. Any questions, y'all? Thank you for your report. Item number 5, discuss and take appropriate action on April 13, 2026 meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve with one correction. We need to make sure that it was back in February, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Thompson became mayor in February, and so it needs to say mayor instead of Mayor Pro Tem in the minutes.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you.
That sounds unacceptable, but okay, we'll go from that as well.
So that is my motion.
Okay, so.
I'll second that.
I was going to say, did you second that? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes as amended. Item number 6, discussion and take appropriate action on the draft 2027-2030 Transportation Improvement Program, TIP, and amendment to the 2050 RTP. Brian.
All right, thank you. And sorry, I'm feeling a little under the weather, so hopefully I won't cough into the microphone during my presentation. But so this item is bringing the upcoming 2027 to 2030 Transportation Improvement Program for adoption. And we're also making amendments to the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. Again, these are both living documents, and we do a wholesale adoption of the Transportation Improvement Program every 2 years. Our current Transportation Improvement Program is the 25 to fiscal year 28. And this upcoming one will cover fiscal years 27 and 2030. Again, I always like to point out, I know I've brought this up before, but these are the bookends to the major actions that this policy board takes for federal funding in the region for transportation projects. Projects have to be listed in the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan in order to receive environmental clearance, which is a requirement for federal funding. And then once they receive a commitment of federal funding, meaning that project is moving forward to implementation and has received a commitment from a variety of different sources. This could be directly from the Federal Highway Administration or Transit Administration. This body also allocates specific buckets of funding, and then the state also delegates a good portion of the federal funding. If federal funding is on a project, it does have to be authorized within the Transportation Improvement Program and authorized by the policy board in order for that project to move forward. So it's an important decision point for the projects that are listed in the improvement program. So this year, for this program, we have 32 projects under the Federal Highway Administration. I do want to say the highway category is Federal Highway Administration. Does not necessarily mean it's a highway project. It just means it's funded through programs that are distributed through the Federal Highway Administration. Likewise, with the transit projects, those are projects and funding that are allocated through the Federal Transit Administration. So we have 32 highway projects with 6 project sponsors totaling $3.8 billion worth of federal funding. And then transit, we have $737 million worth of transit funding. I always like to point out the grouped projects. Those are not listed in your backup materials and will not be listed directly in the Transportation Improvement Program. We have 330 projects. The important thing with grouped projects is that they are important work, but they have a streamlined administrative approval process. So you can think of your safety projects, your maintenance projects, your ITS projects, things that don't rise to the level of significance to be individually listed are included in grouped. And we have about $889 million worth of projects that will be implemented within the region and included in the grouped section of the Transportation Improvement Program. We also have 4 amendments to the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan that are listed here. These are just changes to the project listings, if you have any questions about those. And then finally, we have just completed our outreach. I'm going to hand it over to Joyce Myers to talk about the outreach we conducted for the 27 to 2030 TIP, as well as the amendments to the RTP. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So the outreach comment period lasted from March 16th through April 20th, and we conducted 7 in-person open house events. One of them was at the April policy board meeting. That's where y'all also had the public hearing and heard from the public during that. All of the information that was available in person was also available during the online open house. And continuing our practices, information was also able to be requested by mail, along with a postage paid comment card, and we took voicemail comments. We received 80 comments total. All of those were through, actually there was email, and then we had 1 in-person comment that we received. The majority of those, you will see all of those individually listed in your backup material. So if you want to read through all of the comments, that those are available in the backup material. But just to kind of summarize the request, there was options for multimodal transportation and then also request for more transit, which, as Ryan mentioned, many of even though they are listed in the highway category, these are multimodal projects. I know Tucker's working on a few that have shared use paths and other things incorporated into that, kind of prioritize some transit, and then Austin Transit Partnership is also listed in this version of the TIP. So just wanted to kind of highlight those in response to the public comments. So I will turn it back over to Ryan for the recommendation.
All right. Thank you, Joyce. So that concludes the presentation. As Chad mentioned, we did take this to the Technical Advisory Committee and did have a recommendation to the Policy Board to adopt the upcoming TIP, as well as the amendments as detailed in Resolution 2026-5-6. So staff and TAC do recommend adoption, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Any questions, y'all?
I believe I will.
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if this would be the right moment for me to talk about the motion that I'd like to bring to amend.
On item number 6?
No, that's item 6.
I think you're 7, though.
Sorry.
Okay.
Apologies.
It's okay. That's the worst thing that happens today. I think we're doing okay. Anybody else? Okay. This item does request a vote. So do I have a motion?
Move approval of item 6.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. First and second, discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to comment about the 80 comments related to more transit-related projects than expansion of roadways. And just as we talked earlier in the year about doing more committee work or digging into 2 different ways we score projects, and then how we look at sort of the modeling to be used by this body. And I just think it's all related. It's like you can't have groundwater and surface water really, not talking about the same thing. So I just want us to take it to heart about making sure that our projects are meeting our goals. And I think these are great projects, but I am curious as to how what other MPOs are doing around transit-related projects. I'm glad that TxDOT is allowing and now expecting more pedestrian and bike project. Like, we're evolving, but I just want to make sure that as we move forward, we're super diligent about, being holistic in meeting our goals. Thank you.
Now, I appreciate that, Commissioner. I think that it starts from the onset, right? And starts even, 5, 10 years prior to. What are we looking at regarding what are the goals for the community? How can we implement it so when we get to this point in the matter, it is truly multimodal is what we're looking at right there as well. So completely understand that. Thank you for the comment. Anybody else? All right.
You got it. I want to make sure we took the vote.
Oh, yeah.
I do have, on the motion, I think there's a correction, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, on the 183 3 lanes to 4 lanes project. I think the sponsor is the CTRMA. Not
It is,
TxDOT.
yeah, and I'm very glad you brought that up because I actually had a note here to mention that, so thank you. So that is a correction. We've actually got it already uploaded in the ESTA, ready to go with the corrected thing. So we will correct that list along with the resolution once it's
My motion
signed.
includes that correction.
I was going to say, a motion as amended. Who was your second?
I think Commissioner Dockery.
Do you accept her friendly amendment?
Yes.
All right. The mayor would get on me if I didn't do it correctly with Robert's rules. So, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes as amended.
Thank you.
Item number 7, discuss and take appropriate action on the 2026 federal performance measures targets. Eric.
Thank you, Chair. In 2012, Congress passed legislation that mandated that state DOTs, NPOs, and transit authorities adopt what's known as a Transportation Performance Management System. It's essentially a process designed for NPOs to identify whether the investment decisions that we're making are actually meeting national goals. We utilize this process through a number of ways, including performance-based project selection criteria. We monitor the progress and impact of our investments, and also we include them in our planning products, including the TIP, the plan, and our studies. And we adopt targets, which is what we are here to do today. The way it works essentially is that Congress develops what are known as performance measure goal areas, and it's up to the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration to develop goals and performance measures, and then it's up to the state DOTs, NPOs, and transit authorities to not only identify targets, but then plans and programs designed to meet those targets. Here are those targets. That's 25 metrics over 5 categories. What you see outside of the parentheses are this year's targets, and inside the parentheses were last year's targets. And before I read the recommendation slide, I'll just give a brief summary of the discussion that we had at the TAC meeting on April 27th. At that meeting, there was a motion made asking that PM1, or the safety measures, be modified to meet what's essentially known as Road to Zero targets for the year of 2026. For those who don't know, Road to Zero was adopted by the Texas Transportation Commission in either 2022 or 2023, which is essentially saying that we needed to have traffic fatalities by 2035 and eliminate them by 2050. So if we had that, then for 2026, our fatalities for the region would look like 239 fatalities. The discussion that followed was that there was a few issues that we had to overcome. First is that the Federal Highway Administration considers things like Road to Zero or Vision Zero aspirational. Aspirational, according to their guidance, is not tied to past data, to past performance, and thus viewed as aspirational and discouraged. I believe they use the word highly discouraged. The other issue that we have with if an MPO decides to adopt their own targets according to federal regulations and federal law, the MPO itself would have to do essentially 2 things. One, we'd have to coordinate with TxDOT to identify what those targets are going to be and what process we want to use to develop those targets. And the second thing we have to do is identify or estimate vehicle miles traveled for the region. For those who may not know, vehicle miles traveled is essentially how much traffic is generated on all of our roads for the entire region. Just to give an example, every year, every day, we drive 61 million miles a day in this region. There's 2 ways that's measured. The first is to run a model a model we only run it about once every 5 years. There's a reason for that because of how much extensive work is required to run that model. The other way is that if you've ever driven on the road and you might have driven over some very thin black tubes and you ever wonder what that was for, what those are traffic counts that are happening, and then you multiply by the length of the section between one pair of tubes to the next, how many cars passed over. So if 1,000 cars passed over 1 mile of tubes, that's 1,000 vehicle miles traveled. We would have to basically come up with our own estimates for that for every public road in the region. Again, a very major undertaking. Once we had that discussion, the motion was then amended to say that we will recommend adopting the policy board, the 2026 performance measure report and targets with the stipulation that we discussed with the Federal Highway Administration during our recertification discussion in late June about looking at pathways of how we can adopt regional targets. So that's my presentation, and staff and the Technical Advisory Committee make a recommendation to the policy board to adopt the 2026 performance measure report and targets, and happy to hear any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate that, and we've had the discussion many, many years about what it would take to kind of, because to your point, we'd have to collect our own data and model it and all those things, and even trying to quantify the cost of that, I think there's easily 7 zeros or more in that effort to do that. And while I think everybody wants 0 fatalities, I think this is one of those areas where we have to be financially realistic in working within the parameters that we have. And we've talked about this many times. Each community has different goals, different aspirational goals in terms of safety in their communities and what that needs to look like. But I think, because we've looked at it, and differing from these numbers puts the onus on this body to, number one, figure out how to fund it, how to staff it, how to do that. And does that even move the needle? Is really the question. And changing a number, I mean, a lot of it is about behavior, and we continue to come back. Safety on the roadways improves when traffic enforcement is there. And I get frustrated, and Krista, I'm going to pick on y'all because it's before your time, but the impetus to change this always seems to come from the city of Austin, who won't fund enforcement on your roadways. And that's one of the basic safety facts that, as a region, if you want to get serious about it, let's don't go change the numbers. Fund your law enforcement to protect your roadways, and that will help drive safety more than anything. So, I saw your amended motion here, and it becomes increasingly frustrating when the best way to move the needle is to fund your law enforcement to actually patrol your roadways, and then you will see fatalities drop.
So, thank you, Commissioner. Yes, ma'am.
I hear your frustration, and I think you're going to like my response better than you think. So I appreciate the explanation that you gave as well, and I was already convinced by that I was not going to bring this motion to amend. It's going to get better if I don't get back to enforcement. You let me know. But I do the reason that I prepared the motion to amend is because when we had this discussion around the state of safety report, I agreed with Ashby about how aspirational these goals seem to be. And then when I looked back at the historical performance in the 5 years leading up to COVID, it didn't seem quite so aspirational anymore. And I understand you can't exclusively rely on past performance, and there are a lot of good reasons for that. But I also just know, I think we all know, that if there aren't targets that are meaningful, we don't make progress the same way that we would before. And I certainly believe there to be value in establishing regional targets, if it is possible to do so, yes, in an economical fashion, and also using a methodology that gives us something to target. And since that had already been developed in the state of safety, that's why I drafted that. I no longer want to bring that motion to amend. And I do want to note, however, as you may not be aware, that I have been advocating for reinstatement of the motors unit by the City of Austin, and in particular, as it relates to the northern suburbs, because not just the conversation that has happened here, but Austin's very own Vision Zero program assumes that you will have motor enforcement. That is part of the mix. Our new chair really read me a bit of a riot act in my first couple of months in office as well around this, and it has served us well. I think it is a really important part of the mix, and I bring that to my city as well, and I'm working actively on it. So I hear your frustration. I hope that's better than you expected.
That's way better
I'm no
than
longer
what was
bringing my
put on
motion
here,
to
so
amend,
thank you.
and that's all I've got. Thank you.
No, and I appreciate having this discussion in public for people to hear. This literally goes back to what the federal government is own formula and what the mandates are from that. And the frustrating part is that that's out of our hands, right? That even though we would like to go ahead and go down a different pathway and methodology and what we can do about that, how they score the money they're going to give us or not is based on, well, these are the dynamics we're asking for. We had a specific memo given from the federal government saying explicitly not to go ahead and give those aspirational goals, and no, you're going to go ahead and move what the state has with that. I don't think that dissuades us at some point, having a conversation what we can do, and I know that staff, I do appreciate you putting that in there too as well. And Rebecca Mitchell saying, looking and seeing what's feasible or what's not. I mean, you heard the commissioner talk about, from a financial standpoint, is it realistic what we can do about that? I mean, if you had two different numbers, we're about to meet with, when are we meeting with the federal government? Is it next month?
June.
June, yeah. Next month, we're having a discussion with them. Have a conversation about that, because it's one of those things where if you're trying to do better, you're going to get penalized. And it's unfair and it's unjust and whatever that is, but it also is how things are right now, what things are there as well. So I appreciate having this discussion so people, all 4 people online who are watching us can go ahead and go back and look and see why they made the decision they made. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on the reality of safety being something I agree with, that more enforcement can help with part of the issue. But one of the things that every time we sit here and have these safety discussions and look at measures that I continue to wonder how we're getting into our planning is the reality that we don't put in stoplights at intersections sometimes until there's been a fatality at that intersection. And so there is an element of the design that's going into our roadways that I think this body could be looking at more in how we're scoring, of whether we're forward thinking in the types of things that we know might need to be put in, increasing the lengths of acceleration and deceleration lanes. Things like that we know the design of the roadway impacts the safety along with the enforcement. Both things are very, very important. And so I just want to mention that I hope that as we continue to holistically look at how things are scoring, we continue to prioritize safety and design.
And that is something that we actually do. So the projects in particular that get submitted for consideration for the Transportation Improvement Program, if they are claiming points for safety, they actually have to tell us what the safety countermeasure is, and we calculate the safety improvements. They just can't tell us it's safety. They actually have to prove it to us. So we look at the design, and we try to make as many improvements there as we can and identify those on the front end going in. The issue for us as a region, but not just for us, is behavior issues. Those are the leading causes, and Tucker can tell you even better than I can, because they collect the data, and they have a monthly group that goes through the fatalities every month. And increasingly what we see, especially since COVID, is behavior. Speed, drugs, cell phones.
Appreciate both of y'all's comments.
So do you want a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Nope. Okay,
So,
there we go.
sorry, who
Ms. Lane, second.
Councilmember Lane seconded that.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo.
So who made the motion?
Commissioner Eaglesby.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Item number 8, discussion and take appropriate action on construction partnership program interlocal agreement, ILA, and memorandum of understanding. Talk about, again, working together as a community to try to get some things together. Let's go, Nirav.
All right, I'll make it short. Last month, Ashby gave the board a presentation about our efforts to work with the other agencies in the region about identifying that we are about to have a very significant amount of construction and construction investment happen at the same time for the region. The region's agencies, that's Austin Transit Partnership, City of Austin, CTRMA, TxDOT, Cap Metro, and CAMPO have all agreed to create what's known as a construction partnership program, essentially designed to identify, can we coordinate amongst ourselves to reduce the impact on the traveling public? This agreement is one of the most public-facing facets of the agreement is the CTX Go app. That's meant for both the traveling public and agency staff to identify where the construction activity is occurring. Is there any way we can coordinate and make things more efficient? To formalize everything, we need to adopt both an ILA and a memorandum of understanding. There is a cost component required from CAMPO, but the work that we're doing on our transportation demand management program is designed to alleviate construction, and thus we are very confident that our financial commitments will be met by the work that we're doing on the TDM program. And with that, staff is recommending that the policy board adopt the construction partnership program, ILA, and memorandum of understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Nirav. And if everyone in this room has not already downloaded CTX Go, you need to now. I think it was Krista and I, we were at some event, and she had commented about if I had traffic coming from Pflugerville to go down to the event, and I said no, but what had happened is that I'd put in my location where I was going to, because I was going from Pflugerville downtown Austin, into the app, and it took me a completely different route, and I was wondering, what is going on here? Well, I didn't realize it until I was going down the road and saw this major accident that had occurred in the specific area, and that's the reason why it took me down that pathway. So if you haven't downloaded the app, I am telling you, it is phenomenal. It's great work. I hate to give Tucker, credit publicly, but but I mean, it is a great example of what happens when we get folks together to go ahead and do something that's good for the entire community. Any questions, y'all?
So it's a 2-year contract, but is TxDOT just after, because it's $8.2 million to develop and put it all together, but that's in 2 years. What's the maintenance and operations of it afterwards, and how's that?
Our commitment is 10% for the maintenance operations after the 2 years.
So 10%
of the total cost.
But I mean, somebody's got to house the application, and is that CAMPO, is that TxDOT, is that?
That's TxDOT, ma'am.
Okay, so, because I mean, there's IT staff, and I'm worried about launching something, and then there's not an agreement in place to say, this is how it gets managed and maintained in the future.
There is a management board as part of the ILA that includes all the signatories, and I believe it's 6 people, and I think TxDOT is a non-voting chair, or can't remember in particular, but there is not only an executive board, which CAMPO has a seat on, there's a data governance board, and a...
No, I read through it all. I didn't see anything jump off the page that says this is how it's maintained after it's done.
It's being, Commissioner, it's being maintained by TxDOT through their IT division office.
Okay.
No.
So, but is that in here, in the documents?
I don't know the answer. I'll have to check that.
Yeah. Okay. we can, I guess we can look into that for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, because it costs something, and it takes staff time and whatnot to, as a recovering IT professional.
Yeah.
What I had seen is I'd seen that after the 2-year period, that certain entities would no longer have their allocation covered by CAMPO, and consequently would have to go ahead and contribute to that. That's what I'd seen from that. But to your point, explicitly on that,
'Cause this
Commissioner,
just covers
about
2 years.
where it's coming from there as well. Yeah.
One thing we
question.
did discuss is that the amount of money that we use for TDM can be rolled over. So right now, our TDM program is about $4 million over 4 years. Our yearly contribution is about $400,000. So we believe that we're going to be amassing enough rollover to carry us even past the 2 years.
Yeah. No, and I think TDM's the appropriate bucket for those two as well, given what we're talking about here.
Well, I mean, I think it's a great concept. I think there's some, and, you know, I'd like, and I'm fine with voting on it, but I would like some follow-up on how we're managing it after it's developed, because the construction's 10-plus years. How is it managed in years 3 through 10?
Right.
And there is a section, the budgeting piece of the agreement, that has the executive steering committee setting an annual operating budget for the remainder of it. So
But no funding commitments.
So I hear what you have to say about that. Is that something, Ashby, y'all can get us the next? Yeah.
I think we can have it by the next meeting.
Okay, by the next meeting. All that forth.
Unless, Heidi, you wouldn't have another answer, would you? She's ready.
Oh, wow. Well, the next meeting's right now.
That's my grad school buddy. Of course she knows what she's doing.
Hi, I'm Heidi Ross with Atkins Realis, project manager for TxDOT for the CPP program. The budget was only developed for 2 years because most of the partner agencies only plan their programming for a 2-year timeline. So the thought is there's a 10-year MOU that kind of established the vision for the program, and then the ILA will be re-signed every 2 years with this executive steering committee and the operations board determining the budget every 2 years. At that point, partner agencies have the option not to re-up and not to sign and contribute to the program. So it's a 2-year renewing financial commitment.
Okay. Because I would think all the heavy lift is in the first 2 years of developing the tool and all of that. And then after that, it's data collection.
Yes, well, there's continued operation of the Construction Partnership Program Traffic Management Center. So there is maintenance of the technology tools that we've developed, but they're mostly developed, so it'll just be minor updates. And then really it's the cost of managing and operating the Traffic Management Center, which is a regional TMC that's going to sit as an overlay to all of the individual partner TMCs so we can manage the region holistically.
Okay. Thanks, Heidi.
Sure.
You see UT Civil Engineering?
Well, I mean, do you expect anything less from the University of Texas? I mean, I'm just saying, you know, there as well. Those Aggies, we'd have to wait until like, I don't know, December or something like that. So, any other questions? I'd like to entertain a motion if somebody would like to make a motion.
Beers.
And so,
Houston will. Motion.
okay, so moved. And Mr. Harris, second?
Dr. Real second.
Oh, okay.
I got Harris.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Item number 9, discuss and take appropriate action to authorize CAMPO Executive Director to begin negotiation on the Hunter Road Trail Connectivity and Development Study contract. Nicholas.
Now I'm on. Hey, everyone. So on January 20th, 2026, CAMPO issued an RFP for planning services for the Hunter Road Trail Connectivity and Development Study. The purpose of the study is to assist the Great Springs project with a trail and connectivity study on the Hunter Road, or FM 2439 corridor, in Hayes and Comal County from FM 1102 to Purgatory Creek near Wonderworld Drive in San Marcos. This contract will use up to $436,800 in transportation alternative set aside or TASA funds, The Great Springs project will provide an additional $145,600 in local contributions for a total project budget not to exceed $582,400. The agreement between CAMPO and the Great Springs project formalizing this partnership was executed in January. CAMPO received 16 responses to this RFP. These proposals were ranked and scored out of a maximum of 100 by the evaluation committee using the criteria defined in the RFP. The top 4 ranking firms were invited for in-person interviews with a potential maximum of 25 additional points awarded for their performance. Tool Design Group was the top ranked firm following the interviews and was selected by the evaluation committee as the preferred contract recipient. And with that, staff requests the Transportation Policy Board authorize the CAMPO Executive Director to negotiate and execute a contract with the top-ranked consulting firm to develop the Hunter Road Trail Connectivity and Development Study. Thank you, and I'll take any questions now.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions? Okay, if I see none, then I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion to approve item 10 as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Item passes. Item 10, I hear some people may have some questions about this, so we'll see.
Yeah, there's
They didn't let call the projects. All right, right.
Thank you. Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot to discuss. Thankfully, I've only got one slide, but because I've only got one slide, I decided to give you all some extra materials at your desk. This is to discuss the draft recommendation that staff has put together for the policy board to consider regarding the 2028 to 2031 call for products. Just to take a step back, this is a call for products to distribute surface transportation block grant funding, transportation alternative set-aside funding, which is a program specifically for bike and pedestrian facilities, as well as carbon reduction program funding as well. The majority of the funding, we have over $350 million all told between the 3 programs, and the majority of that is surface transportation block grant funding. So this is this table you see here is the culmination of over a year's worth of work. We spent 4 months doing webinars and workshops and having during the open application period, and then the applications were due on January 30th, and we spent basically every waking hour evaluating all of the applications to bring you this recommendation. One thing I want to point out is that the review process was very, very thorough. We had 9 independent reviewers on each individual application, of which we had 121 applications. So we had 3 teams of 3. We had a team of 3 doing the cost-benefit analysis, a team of 3 doing the benefit evaluation, and then a team of 3 doing the risk assessments. They were all done independently. I think it was really important that we all reviewed these in our own silos, and then we came together to come to a consensus if we saw things differently. I'm happy to say that most everyone, we were pretty much at a consensus off the bat once I compiled all the results. But it was important. There were, a couple of discrepancies between the way we saw things, and that's an important part of the process. So we had 2 meetings, one specifically for risk assessment and one for the benefit evaluation, just to make sure and calibrate and discuss anything that we saw differently and to come to a consensus. And I will say that this does represent a consensus for the entire team. So with that, one thing and one of the questions I received since we sent out the recommendation, hopefully you've had a chance to look at the dashboard that was sent out on Friday, that you can slice through the data any way you think you want to look at and take a deep dive into the projects themselves. There's detailed information there. And then there will also be a full report. We're working on a full project report that will come out hopefully on Friday. By the end of this week, it will have complete project profiles and we'll have all the details of the results and the evaluation. I think it's important if you have questions about how your project scored the way it did or why the risk was determined to be what it was, all of that information will be provided by the end of this week. So hopefully you'll have 3 weeks to digest all of that information. We can certainly hold any debriefs during that time if necessary. But it's important that have all the information in front of you to make an informed decision. With that being said, I do want to point out this is staff's recommendation. At the end of the day, it's our job to give you the best information possible to make the decision. But again, the decisions are yours as a policy board, and it's just our job as staff to make sure that we're giving you the best information possible to make those decisions. I did want to talk about the risk assessment just in general, and hopefully the materials that are in front of you, how we evaluate risk, because I think most of the questions I've gotten have been about the risk assessment. How do we determine, so we basically have 4 qualifiers. We have a low risk project. A moderate risk project is a project that has minor issues that are isolated to that project and don't impact the cost estimate or the amount of funding that's being recommended for the project. High-risk projects have major issues with them that impact how much funding we would put on that project. That's the key differentiator between moderate and high risk. And then critical risk are projects where we just simply don't have enough information to make a recommendation. Those projects, even if you awarded them, wouldn't be able to have develop an advanced funding agreement with TxDOT because there's just simply not enough information to make to do those items. And so, yeah, with that, and then so with the risk assessment, so what you have in front of you, basically how we measure it is the project development process. As a project goes through the development process, the level of risk lowers the further you go through that process. It's an iterative process that goes from high-level planning all the way to construction engineering and eventually to construction. And the further you go along in the process, the lower the risk of that project. So one thing we measure in the risk assessment process is where the project is in the development process to make sure it's ready for the next stage, and they shouldn't be skipping multiple stages. You'll see on the second page on this printout that I have, if a project has just completed project level planning, it should be then moving into the engineering process and not skipping ahead to construction. You're skipping multiple steps where there's a lot of information that will lower the risk of that project. You have to go through the environmental process and figure out what kind of environmental risks you have. You have to figure out how much right-of-way you have. Things like that. It's an iterative process, step-by-step process that systematically lowers the risk. So one thing we do check is, we award planning, engineering, and construction in this project call. If you're asking for construction funding, we are looking to make sure that you've completed all of these steps to ensure that we have all the information we need for the project to go into construction. And then one other thing that really impacted the risk assessment was the quality of the applications. We asked for a lot of information in the applications necessarily so that we can make these determinations. We look for a detailed cost estimate, a detailed scope so we know exactly what it is the policy board is investing in, how much it costs, and where those costs came from, which is a crucial part of the process. And so oftentimes if you have a high risk or a critical risk project was the determination, we identified an issue either with basic eligibility or with the scope, cost estimate, budget, or even the financial commitments. I think one thing's important. We check to make sure the local sponsor has the funding to have the upfront project expenditures, as well as provide the local match for the project, which is a critical piece of the process. So if you see a high risk or a critical risk, it typically ties back to one of those 4 issues in the application. But I just wanted to point that out because those were the 2 primary drivers, either the project development process or the application, are the primary drivers for the level of risk that was determined for each individual project. Aside from the risk determination, you also have the project scores. These are the high-level scores that are a composite of the benefit evaluation, which is a performance measure, qualitative and quantitative performance measures, and then in conjunction with that, we also have the cost-benefit analysis, which to Ms. Patillo's comment, we look at the safety impacts versus how much it takes to invest in the project for cost-benefit analysis as well as congestion. So we look at those 2 factors, see what those benefits are for the region, and then we look at how much it costs to realize those benefits, and that gives you the cost-benefit analysis. And those 2 things combined give you your project score. To develop the recommendation, we basically put all of the different categories, which I do want to point that out. We have 7 categories of projects, because every type of project has to be measured completely differently. So we've balanced that out with 7 different performance measure matrices, as well as different cost-benefit analysis processes for each type of project. But they are all relatively equal, so we combine them all into one master list, and then we move down the ranking, starting at the very top ranking project, and then move down that list and assign funding as it's eligible until we exhaust all of the funding. One thing I want to point out, we're only recommending low and moderate risk projects. Low-risk projects get a straightforward recommendation from staff. We are also recommending moderate-risk projects. However, moderate-risk projects are going to have a little extra homework over the summer. Those minor issues that we identified, we just want to double-check before we program them into the Transportation Improvement Program that those things are addressed. They're minor things that should be relatively quick for the local government, but I think it's important for us to do our due diligence to ask them to provide that extra information, and so that will be a contingent recommendation. We won't be recommending high risk and especially not critical risk either. With that, I just want to, again, next steps, we're going to do a full report that you'll have. One thing I do want to point out is that we do have a little extra TASA funding available. So what we're going to do, we have about $20 million worth of TASA that's still available as we got through our list of moderate and low-risk projects. So what we're going to do, it's really good for us to exhaust our TASA funds if possible. It does have a time frame. They expire after 4 years. So we're going to revisit all of the TASA eligible projects that are in the high risk category to see if we can get any of those off a high center. And if we can, we'll be recommending those as well to make sure that I think that is worth the risk, even if they are high risk, to take that chance because TASA funding will lapse after a certain amount of time. And so we want to make sure we're getting that right. The only other note I wanted to point out is you'll see at the very bottom of the list, there's a hybrid bus for Cap Metro, which is assigned carbon reduction funding. So after I got through all of the other types of funding, the only eligible carbon reduction program funding project was the hybrid, that was low or moderate risk, was the hybrid bus upgrade program. Because that funding, we won't have enough funding to cover that request until 2029, and because the carbon reduction program funding is a particular risk of going away in the next reauthorization bill, I might recommend that we wait. We can program it today and see what happens, but I think that funding is at particular risk. So if we do program that, we need to be very clear with Cap Metro that that funding may not exist by the time it's available. So I just wanted to point that out. It does have that asterisk there, so that's really kind of a board decision. I think there's merits for doing it either way, honestly. But just wanted to point that out. So with that, I'll open it up to questions. So, thank you.
So, Ryan, I do want to say from the onset, I do appreciate how meticulous y'all have been. We haven't had a call for projects in 8 years. I do appreciate the workshops that have been done, the various different entities that have sent their representatives to have discussions, to get the training ideas, the understanding of how meticulous the process was going to be, and the information that's necessary for that. Additionally speaking, I appreciate you talking about essentially the two different buckets, either folks skipping over the project development process or issues with the application itself. Because there are definitely things that on here that I think many of us would have liked to have been funded, but likely they fall into one of those two different areas. Even if we are cognizant and understand, hey, listen, this is what they're trying to do here, the application didn't reflect that, or your own processes within your own local entity didn't establish the appropriate way to get that done and organized with that. I did want you to make sure that you articulate what TASA funding is. I thought it was a good idea about that, and also why we would want to do that before 2029 or anything else on that aspect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So transportation is a set aside basically of the SDBG funding program that is specifically for bike and pedestrian facilities, non-vehicular travel. There's a few other things you can spend it on, but it's particularly for bicycle and pedestrian elements. And it does we get an allocation of about $7 million a year from the current authorization bill, but the second it hits our proverbial bank account from the federal government, we have 4 years to get it on a project. And if that project doesn't get an advanced funding agreement through TxDOT and does not get obligated, that funding will lapse and go back to DC and be redistributed through redistribution in August. So we need to stay on top of that essentially. And I will point out the carbon reduction program is very similarly structured. It's almost the same amount. It has you can spend it on TASA eligible activities, but also a few others like ITS and buses and things like that. But it also similarly has a lapse period of 4 years.
Yeah. So y'all, just to break it down to the English right here, and I do appreciate you articulating it, is that, listen, we didn't have as many projects call for this right there. So what we're doing now is saying, okay, cool. We're going to go ahead and allow for folks to go ahead and reiterate, get some information, data points on that, so we can exhaust and make sure we can use that funding moving forward. And I think that ties into our discussion previously about we're talking about being multimodal and what are we looking at regarding, not just concrete, but actually making sure that we represent what TxDOT has talked about, that is, as a society and as a state, we have to get people moving in various different mechanisms. So I think it's a very prudent action to go ahead and do that, dude. Great work.
Thank you.
Any questions, y'all?
I do.
Yes, sir.
And I hate to do this because I know that it's the last thing you want to do is get into specific projects, but under the total project list sorted by score, it was the 22nd project. It's PFA 126, sponsored by the Texas Department of Transportation. On SH 29, it's the Bertram Gap. It's actually part of an ongoing project, roadway expansion project. And like I say, it scored 22nd, but you all have it labeled as high risk, and I'm trying to figure out why. If they're already widening the road west of there and it's an infill gap, why would it be at high risk?
I would need to pull up that spreadsheet just to double check that one. I think that one in particular it was probably something with the application. So, the cost estimate, I believe, was the issue with that one, but I'll check. So I can certainly get with you before the end of the meeting. Happy to talk with that. So.
Chair, I've got a question also.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I am going to point out a couple of projects also, Ryan, and I apologize for that, but I said I would, and so I want to do that. And I think you answered some of the questions that they may have already, so I hope that, they were listening so that they could hear that. But I guess both the City of Buda and the Great Springs Project jointly sponsored two proposals, the Regional Onion Creek Park Connectivity Study and the FM 967 Shared Use Path Study. Both projects were among the highest scoring proposals in the overall grant cycle. Specifically, the Regional Onion Creek Park Connectivity Study was fourth highest, and then the Shared Use Path Facility Study was the 10th highest. So the questions were, neither of these projects were recommended because they were considered high risk, but neither the City of Buda nor the Great Springs Project staff have received or been made aware of why these projects were considered high risk. It sounds like on Friday, this information is going to come out so that they can review those projects and determine why.
Yes.
I guess the second question is, are they going to be invited, since sounds like there are additional funds that are available, are they going to be able to provide additional information to clarify any concerns that CAMPO staff may have about these proposals?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that goes back to, we are going to revisit all of the high-risk TASA eligible projects, which includes these. I think the high risk issue there was an issue of capacity, and I think we've had some discussions with Great Springs. That is something we're double checking, but we will be revisiting that absolutely. So
Commissioner,
thank you so much.
I spoke with Gary Merritt with Great Springs Friday, and I spoke with him again this morning, and relayed to him that the issue of risk was on bandwidth of their staff, because they have a small staff, and they've gotten work from us recently, one of those that y'all just approved, work from TxDOT, and then work from San Antonio on PO as well. And so we were just concerned about their ability to process all of that. After talking to Mr. Merritt twice now, where we ended up was they would like for those two projects that you mentioned to go forward in years 27 and 28. And then we could move some of the other ones into the later years of the TIP. And then that would sort of address the bandwidth issue, because we will be spreading some of the work out. So that's probably what you will see from us when we come back to you with that. And we think we can address that issue.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mayor?
I had just a general question about these things. I'm not arguing with the scoring or anything, but just generally speaking, if you've got a project, that's what made me think about it, you've got here, you've got the middle, and you've got here. These scored low, recommended, let's go with them, but the one in the middle didn't, and now it's kind of not making sense. What do you do in a case like that?
if we had like 3 projects and there's like the gap in the middle didn't get recommended.
That's high risk.
Yeah, I mean, it's really like we're treating them all independently. That was an interesting, actually, discussion I had. You know, we looked at like Kenny Fort, for example, same thing, like one section scored higher than the other, but they're treated independently, so I think that's kind of.
Well, that was my concern is I get, you treat everything independently, you don't go through the scoring, but when all is said and done, do you look at, oh, gee, maybe we need to work on this one and see how we can get this one, the high-risk one in the middle, to be a low risk? Is that what's going to happen with these project, the information that's going out and the conversation that happens after that?
And that's that, you know, the risk that, you know, that we've determined is based on what the information we got in the application. So if it is high risk, you know, and there, you know, with TASA, obviously we have extra funding, but if we want to go back and revisit all of them, it becomes a slippery slope, I guess. It's like, do we reopen? Because a lot of these high risk, we had some very good projects that were just missing in a budget entirely.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. If somebody just missed getting another page in and it was,
yeah.
And they've got it, and now that would affect, you know, the final risk level. Is that possible?
I mean, that's entirely up to the policy board. I'd say that we'd have to reopen basically the applications, let everybody fix their applications. And that would take months, honestly. So, and obviously impact, we'd have to change everything. I mean, as a competitor process is basically you get what you get, like we get what we get when y'all submit it and then we evaluate it and then it shakes out like this. That's certainly, you know, an option, but at the same time, it does impact everything, I guess, the schedule.
And I don't know how many projects there are like that here, but I would say it's certainly not going to be all of the high-risk ones. It'll be just a few and maybe one or two. So
I'd say it's a good mix, I think. And I always bring up the cost estimate because I feel like that's where we saw a lot of the issues with the high-risk projects. And so letting everybody redo their cost estimates. And some of it, you know, it might be a quick fix. Maybe they forgot to attach it. That's probably certainly the case with a couple of them, but some of them just will have to wholesale go back and redo a lot of work, which may take a few months. It just depends on the project. So when y'all get the report, I mean, I guess y'all can read through that and see if that's something y'all are interested in doing. I do think, obviously, we would have to probably postpone the June action, and then it would put, you know, these projects, we'd have to redo the list essentially, so.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and something it's the question I always get whenever somebody sees the score is like, well, can we fix our application? And it's as a competitive process.
Well, that's but I'm going back to the ones that were scored well. Now, does it make sense to go forward with those when you don't know what's going to happen with the connectivity in between them? So, but I'm not trying to knock anybody's out of commission or out of line if they've got the go-ahead now. Okay.
So, Mayor, I'll say a few things. And to your first example about you got two pieces and three pieces, and then maybe the piece in the middle didn't get, and so now you've got a gap. And like Ryan said, we did run into that with one of our local governments. They submitted three separate pieces to us, and so that's the way we analyzed it because that's the way they submitted it.
Right.
Excuse me, to us. If we were to go back and say now, okay, you can resubmit and now submit it as one, well, that's a different project now.
Okay.
So it changes everything in terms of that project. I think it would be somewhat unfair to the folks that follow the instructions to start with. Then I'll go back also, Mayor, to last fall. Ryan had, I don't know how many webinars, but we started last August, September, all the way through December.
Yeah.
So, and then first part of this year, we had some folks that, for example, we had a Caldwell County project that just needed Commissioners Court resolutions and something else. We came back to y'all and we made exceptions for folks to go back and fix those things. So to me, we've kind of done that already. And if we went past that now, we would essentially be starting over.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm also just kind of looking down the list, what are the high-risk ones that got kicked out? And, I see some planning studies that were marked as high risk, and, I know that effort was made. First of all, I should have also started by thanking you for the extremely comprehensive approach that you've taken, all those seminars, fantastic, and I can tell that you've been extremely methodical, and that's very, very appreciated. So I know that as part of the people adapting to this readiness criteria, design was separate, planning and design were separated out from construction, where maybe they wouldn't have been in the last call. But I don't understand how a planning study would be high risk, and it also begs the question even more when it's otherwise a very highly rated project. Can you help me understand that?
Yeah, no, and that is, so planning is the lowest risk phase that we award funding for. It's almost always going to come down to an issue with the application. So if we didn't get a scope of work, if we didn't get a budget, then it's going to be considered high risk. So I think that's actually the case with all planning high risk studies. We actually did have one study, I think, that actually had another study that Cesar Chavez, in particular for the city of Austin, yeah, they have a study that is actually ongoing right now that y'all got for an earmark, and that one's considered high risk because y'all have got another study that's already studying that section. So, but yeah, if otherwise, I think that was the only one that had like something external considered high risk because of that cannibalistic study. I guess that's not the right word for it, but but if it makes sense, you know what I mean. It's like, yeah. But yeah, so but otherwise it'll be an application issue.
Okay, all right, thanks.
The study of the study. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you all coming up with a concise way for there to be recommendation to the board, and also look forward to seeing the details on Friday. I think that will be helpful both for the board right now to see the process that went into getting to those scores. I also think that it's important as a roadmap for future project calls. And I'm just wondering what level of granularity of data we might get as far as, will we see whether applications were supported by a consultant or by a city directly, and things like that that might help us understand some of the costs that go into both the process, and then also for smaller cities in the future, understanding where they may need to budget if they're going to participate in a project call and score higher.
That is an excellent question.
Thank you.
Sometimes I think we know if a consultant did the work for somebody, and others, I'm not sure that we know.
Like I guess the person who's applying, you wouldn't know if a city representative put their name on it versus the consultant who's prepared it putting it in.
Yeah,
okay, I see what you're saying.
Normally we don't know. Sometimes the consultant for the local government would contact us directly, and in that case, we knew, but other times we just don't know.
Great.
But to your point, part of the conversation, what I've really loved under Ashby's stewardship is the partnership with the smaller local governments to try to get them up to the level to make sure that they have an opportunity to compete on these things. Because as you have conveyed numerous times to me, 6 Ways from Sunday, it's that this stuff costs a lot of money. It really does, just to prepare to try to get an application in for approval. So maybe something we want to look at sometime in the future.
I appreciated the city manager from City of BK being here. Looking at the list, I think they might be the smallest city or entity that applied, other than Great Springs in combination with others. And so being able to score as well as they did as a small city, it takes a lot of planning to get there. And I think the webinars were a great tool. There has been a lot more support this time, and so really appreciate that. And I just want to see where we can always be improving the type of information we're providing so that there is a true opportunity for smaller cities to participate.
Okay, and one of the things we have done, especially since the last call in 2018, is we have done a lot more feasibility studies on behalf of small local governments, so they had more of a level playing field and they had a chance to get to some of the money.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I would say to the staff that it's clear that the risk assessment carried a heavy weight in these recommendations, and I commend the staff for doing that. I think I read in the backup materials there were 13 different items reviewed in the risk assessment on each project. Could you tell us if past performance or success in past performance or lack of success in past performance was one of those 13 factors?
Yeah, so we look at the risk assessment that TxDOT conducts because, so if anybody's not familiar with TxDOT, if you develop an advanced funding agreement with them, they do a risk assessment of you as a local government to see if you are capable of implementing the project, and you get a score A through D. D is failing, and D means you can't get an advanced funding agreement. That's the extent of what we look at past performance right now. I know we've had discussions about amping that up a little bit. Right now, no one, with the exception, I think there's one local government that did not submit, has a grade of D. But that is something I think that's important for the board to consider going forward is, past performance outside of that risk assessment. If someone has a risk assessment of D, we will not be recommending them. They will automatically be critical risk because they can't get an advanced funding agreement. But I think there should be pause to consider anything that has a C is a pretty bad score as well, and so that needs to be considered as well, I think. So something for the board to consider, but right now it's just the risk assessment that y'all provide, and if it's a D or below, or a D, essentially, is the only thing that kicks it up.
That leads me to another question. How did you rate TxDOT? Because I don't think you have a grade sheet on ourselves, do you?
Yeah, y'all didn't have y'all already, y'all get an A if y'all have a risk assessment.
Because we're pretty good at delivering projects, so that's the question. Okay.
So Tucker, when we had a discussion about that earlier, when we were still in the process of doing this, there was a concern from some board members that we had local governments that didn't have a score yet because they hadn't done anything yet, and that they would somehow be penalized for that. We, as this body, we never really got past that point, and so yeah, I mean, I would like to see the scores reflect the risk as well.
I think that's an interesting discussion to have in the future, because I know we talked about that in another context several months ago about that, and we can't trust all of Tucker's report cards, so we can figure out what we're actually doing with these folks and get that organized from there. But it's a good question. That is a really good question. Any other questions? All right. Well, Ryan, I'm sure no one's going to have any questions for you about this in the future or next month when we have this discussion. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Item number 11, Executive Director's Report on Transportation Planning Activities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we've got a few things to report on our quarters program that we've been working on now for several years. So the feasibility study that we're doing in partnership with TxDOT Austin District on FM 734 Palmer Lane, that work is nearly complete. We've had the last of the public meetings, and it's just the report that needs to be written up, and then we will be done with that one. On FM 973, that work is moving ahead nicely. So on the northern piece, TxDOT and their consultants continue to make progress there. And for those of you that aren't familiar, the FM section of FM 973 is from 290 going up to 79, where the Samsung plant is being built in Taylor. So that work is going along nicely there. On the southern, that project was broken up into two segments. On the southern end of it, the city of Manor contributed some funds to help move that along through the schematic portion of design. And so that's looking to be done probably in the next year. I'm looking at Kevin. When will that be done?
Good afternoon. Kevin Hoffman with Tetra Tech, and part of the GEC program. And specifically to the southern section, there will be a second public meeting late this year following the development of the initial meeting from a month ago. And then continued design will go into the first part of next year, and then finalizing that in the spring of 27.
Okay, thank you. And then last, FM 969, so from where the Tesla plant is at 130 going back to the east to where it hits 71 city of Bastrop. That's a feasibility study as well. Long overdue. We are nearly done with that. We had the public meetings, I think it was last month, and the report remains to be written on that, and that'll be done in the early part of 2026. We're making real progress on these. We do have other quarters on the list still to work on for y'all, and look forward to bringing those to you. And then next, pat on the back for TxDOT. This is the groundbreaking for the Loop 360 at Courtyard Drive project. I could not make it that day. I was having lunch with Mayor Thompson at a nice little Italian restaurant in Leander. Doyce, do you want to, since you were there, can you?
Sure. So I attended this groundbreaking. It was one of the Texas Clear Lanes project that is a Texas Transportation Commission priority, and I know improvements along 360 have also been a priority of this board. So this project, which Tucker can probably speak a little bit better to, but this is to do a grade separation at Courtyard at Loop 360, just north of the Pennybacker Bridge, and then also a diverging diamond interchange at RM 2222. And TxDOT continues to make progress on 360 and work their way north, and so I think there will be projects in the coming years to do those grade separations at Lakewood and, as I call them, the two Spicewood Springs.
This is a big deal. You want to say anything about it, Tucker?
Not on this one, but the project south of this at Cedar Street, it should be wrapping up by the end of this calendar year. So we ought to be having a ribbon cutting for the first project, sets of projects on this.
Awesome.
Okay. So last but certainly not least, for those of you that have not heard, I will be retiring from CAMPO. June 30th of this year will be my last day, and looking forward to new adventures.
Well, Ashby, I think you, on behalf of everybody here, it doesn't go unnoticed all that you've done in your time here, how much of a demonstrable difference you've made, how you've elevated where we are and seen not only in this state but around the country, given the numerous national boards you're on and different association meetings you speak to on things. And, you know, frankly speaking, I'm not quite sure how we're ever going to repay you for all the work you've done here for us. But it's been wonderful to have a nice, calm voice of someone, a smoothie figure who dives into details, who's responsive to not only the things that you hear from the elected officials, but to their staffs too as well, and wages and throughs, and takes care of all the different issues that are accompanying us. So you will be missed. You are appreciated. And I think all of us should go ahead and give you a standing ovation for all your work right here. Thank you, Ashby. With that said, that leaves us with the chair's announcements. The next TAC meeting will be May 18th at 2 p.m. The next policy board meeting will be June 8th, 2026. And by the end of the next policy board meeting, we should already have a national championship back-to-back for the women's softball team, hook 'em. And the men should be playing for the College World Series.
Yep.
With that said, we're adjourned.